Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm doing my May wrap up. I know it's the middle of June. It's taken me like 2 weeks to even put this video together, and as you can tell, I'm back in my car. I'm a mom that's constantly on the go and I own my own business. A lot of times I'm stuck in my car for several hours, and I figured while I'm here, why not just make a video? Bear with me, I've read quite a few books in the month of May. I'm not going to count all of them in here because some of them were ones that I had read that were very short, like young children's books. Back in May, I was helping out in an elementary school. I kind of had a job there for a little bit. I did like Title I with a bunch of third graders. So we read a few books and I counted those because they were like your Magic Treehouse books. There was one called Pleasing the Ghost. I forget her name, but I read a book quite a while ago from her called Walk Two Moons and I loved it. Sharon Creech, I think is what her name is. Anyway, so I'm not including these in my May wrap up. But today I'm gonna go over 6 books that are either young adult, middle grade, or adult novel. First book I'm gonna talk about is probably my lowest rated one for the month of May. This is Polaris. It is a middle grade adventure, supposedly scary novel. I got this at my kids' book fair. It sounded really good. My son, who is 12 years old, was like, "Mom, this sounds really good. Let's read it together." Unfortunately, he lost steam about a couple of chapters in, but for me, I stuck with it and I read it and I only gave it 2 stars. This is also rated G. There's no swearing in here. There's no sexual content. It's a very perfect middle grade novel. And the synopsis of this was these kids are on a ship. They come ashore on this island and suddenly things go crazy. There's a mutiny with all the adults. They pretty much kill each other off, and then those that survived jump in a small boat and just sail away and leave these children on the boat to fend for themselves. And so this is their journey about having to survive on this ship by themselves and hopefully get back to land. Sounded amazing, but things kind of took a weird turn and I felt like the story kind of dragged. Like I was always like, okay, get to the part where it's gonna scare me. Get to the part, like it was so maddening. I felt like it was just really slow when this whole synopsis sounded like it had such potential, but I was kind of let down. And maybe this would be a great novel for young kids who are just kind of starting to delve into scary books. They're past like goosebump stage, but they're not quite into like the really scary stuff. This would probably be right up their alley. But for me as an adult reading this from a middle grade, and I was also trying to read it from like a 12-year-old's perspective, I felt like if I was a 12-year-old, I would have lost interest. But I like scary stuff, so this would probably be really great for a young kid who is really easy to scare but kind of wants to dive into that stuff. But other than that, I only gave it 2 stars. My next book is a YA, more like historical fiction, adventure kind of stuff. There's a lot of political stuff in this trilogy. This is the 3rd book called The Winter's Kiss. Sorry, bear with me. I'm just getting back into these videos. So The Winter's Kiss by Marie Katowski. This is the 3rd book in the Winter's Curse trilogy. I read the first 2, The Winter's Curse, and crap, what's the other one? About a year or 2 ago, and I really loved it. It's got a slow burning love in it. It's about this young girl who has her father's like this general in a huge army. They're very privileged kind of people. They took over the Valorians' land and their people. But anyways, they make this whole other culture of people into slaves and everything. And she is ridiculously smart. The growth that comes in the 3rd book is such a different Kestrel, who is our main protagonist, than the 1st book. And so reading this was just like, it was a slow burning love all through 3 books. I loved it more than I thought I would. Okay, so I rated this PG. There's no swearing, there's no sexual content or anything. So if you have a very young adult or a teenager who wants to get into this series, this is perfect for them. There's definitely LGBT reference, but it's not really talked about. I don't know, I loved this series. It was so good. The battle scenes were a little bit gory, you know how battles can be. But other than that, like it was It's a perfect YA trilogy. I definitely get into it. All right, my next book is an adult kind of chick lit novel. It's actually quite a chunker, but I flew through this much faster than I thought. This is called The 2-Week Wait by Sarah Rayner. I've never read a book by her before. I actually went into this book quite blind. I rated this 3.5 to 4 stars. It is PG-13. It's got some language in it. It does have adult subjects. There's no sex or anything in it, but it does handle about 2 women who are struggling to become pregnant. One has been dealing with cancer for years. She's now in remission. Her ovaries and stuff removed, so she cannot have a baby. And this just debilitates this lady who is like in her 30s or 40s. And then we have another character, and we follow her as she is just a young girl, has a partner, and you know, she's not interested in men, so she's not going to have a family or, you know, babies that way. But she feels like she goes through a medical issue that kind of frightens her, and she's like, it's either now or never that I have kids. The young girl who is not married, she decides, you know, she will donate her eggs, but whoever she donates her eggs to will kind of fund her process to have IVF, and that's how her journey is. And then the lady that she donates her eggs to, that is married and is just kind of getting older in her years. She's really not old, she's like my age, but they can't naturally have a baby. They decide to go through IVF, and it's the struggles that she goes through, the infertility and the IVF stuff and the hormones and just the ups and the downs, and between a marriage or between a young girl who's single. It's just, she dives into this so well. She explains it so well. Like, it just sucks you in. The only bad part I had about this was the last quarter of the book. I felt like it finally gets to the part where, you know, they're pregnant and, you know, how they're going through all of this and the feelings, and it just like suddenly flies through all that. And I feel like, wait, you explained the before so good and so in detail. But then I felt like once the pregnancies began, she just like flew through it. And then the ending, I felt like it was just kind of ripped out from under me, and I'm like, that's it? That's all I get? Like, suddenly we went from like this just indulging, get into the middle of this IVF story, and then suddenly the good parts that you're like so looking forward to, and it's just like flies through it, and wham bam, thank you ma'am. I was kind of expecting more, so that's why I didn't rate it as high as I wanted it to. I was hoping to but it was the last quarter of the book that just kind of fell flat for me, that I was just like, really? That's all I get? Like, I needed more. So I think it's just personal opinion. But my next book is Bridge to Terabithia by Catherine Patterson. Everyone should know or have heard about this book. If you haven't, or at least the movie, you're living under a rock. But this is a novel that I've been dying to read forever because it's such a classic. My 6th grader, my 12-year-old, he was reading this as in a class setting. So I've been one of those moms that I'm like, whatever my kid is reading, I'd love to read it with them. So I can talk to them about it, and I can help them with homework or whatever, but I'm just kind of one of those moms that I'm like, okay, what's your next book in your class, because I'm reading it. So for the month of May, it was Bridge to Terabithia. It was good. I rated this 3 stars. It is PG. I think there was a swear word or 2 in this. But other than that, it was nothing. But it does talk about death and feelings. And it's about a young boy and a young girl that kind of come together in, you know, weird circumstances in school. And they become just really good friends. And they, of course, invent this bridge to Terabithia, which is like they've made a little bridge with just like a tree log across a river, and then they've built like this fort, and they just have these amazing imaginations and become really, really close friends. And then something tragic really happens between the 2 of them, and it's just how they cope with it, and how just it was a tragic story at the very end, and it did make me tear up. From a kid's point of view, I could see how this would really, really pull on your heartstrings. But I felt like because this book was so short, from an adult's perspective, I was like, I kind of wanted more dialogue. I kind of wanted more information. I kind of wanted it to like draw out, and I felt like it was just such a quick story about such a tragic event that it kind of like was like, meh. It was good. I liked it. I enjoyed it, but it was kind of okay for me. It wasn't fabulous and over the top. I felt like it was just kind of too short. My next book is another middle grade novel, Pie, from Sarah Weeks. Our school district, so my kids' school, I have 2 boys, my kids' district takes a bunch of schools and they put together in 1 month a book that the entire district reads with their families, and then the kids come back to school and whatever was designated for them to read that day or that evening, they ask questions, and then you get to answer the questions, and then they do a drawing at the end of school. So every day they're doing a drawing for these kids who have answered the question correctly, and then they get to come down to the office and do something fun. So my kids' school, for at least as long as I've known, for the last 7 years, they have done this one district, one book event, and there's always been kind of a fun novel. Like there's in the past years it's been like The One and Only Ivan, Because of Winn-Dixie, The Trumpet Swan, just kind of fun classics, Newbery classics. One year we did the BFG, The Big Friendly Giant, but this time it was called Pie. And this was actually a very sweet story. I rated this 4.5 stars. It is G-rated, there's no swearing, no nothing. It is a perfect, just whimsical, middle grade novel. And it's about this young girl, her grandmother, who is famous, like throughout states beyond states, of her pies. Well, one day her grandmother dies, and suddenly everyone in this town is in an uproar because they're like, well, who's her famous pie recipe going to go to? Who's going to inherit it? And come to find out, this grandmother left her famous recipe with her cat. But she leaves the cat in care with her granddaughter. And so the story is from the point of view of this granddaughter and how she has to cope with not only just the death of her grandmother, but also the crazy hype that goes behind her grandmother's recipe. It's adorable, it's cute, it's got some twists, it's got some turns, and I actually really enjoyed this book. My last book for the month of May is Michael Vey, The Prisoner of Cell 25 by Richard Paul Evans. This is book 1 in the Michael Vey series. I think there's 7 books. I've heard about this for years. I didn't start reading it until my 12-year-old became interested in it, and trying to get my 12-year-old to read has been such a struggle over the years. So when he picked out this book and he's like, Mom, I'm addicted to this book, this was the first book ever that he actually sat and finished without me hounding him, and I was like, okay, if he likes it that much, I'm gonna get into it. So we bought all 6 or 7 paperback editions, and we've been reading them. And so I kind of went into this with low expectations because I'm like, it's another but it's actually a YA novel, not a middle grade novel. And it's about this boy named Michael who lives in Idaho. Hello, I'm in Idaho. He has these electric abilities, and he didn't start really recognizing them until he got older as a teenager. As time goes on, he's getting stronger and stronger, but he's had to hide this ability. And suddenly he becomes friends with this cheerleader, and come to find out she's got not magic abilities. There's no magic in here, but these kids are like conduct electricity in some way, and it's because some crazy science kind of experiment went crazy when they were babies in the hospital, and that's why suddenly all these children have these electric abilities, but they're all spread out. And this company that technically made these kids has been trying to hunt these kids down and find them and bring them back to their facility so that they can test them and be kind of science experiments. And it's about him not only discovering himself, but also discovering his abilities and what he's capable of, but as well as having to run from this company called the Elgin that are hunting them down, pretty much using them for science experiments. And I actually like this book way more than I thought I would. This one I rated 5 stars. It is PG. There's no swearing. There's no anything in it. It's a great YA series that's full of just mystery and thrilling stuff. A little bit of suspense maybe, it's great adventure novel that just is right up my alley, and I liked it a lot more than I thought. It like blew me away. And the writing that Richard Paul Evans does it's phenomenal. He does a great job. It just flows perfectly. I could see why kids love this novel. I don't know why we don't hear more about it, but that's just me. So anyway, guys, thank you for my lengthy May wrap up. I can't wait to get into June. I'm already halfway into June and I've read quite a few books already. So look forward to probably the end of June or the first part of July for my June wrap up. Thank you so much for joining me. Please subscribe and like my video. I'd love to hear from you, so if you want to comment, please do. I would love to interact with you and see if you've read any of these books. And if you've got any other recommendations, let me know. Thanks, guys. Bye.